Good morning everybody and welcome to the first in a series of live webinars which we have planned for National Graduate Week. I'm Simon Bell, founder of careermap.co.uk, one of the UK's most influential early career job boards and careers advice and guidance platforms. We're also the team behind launching this first ever National Graduate Week. The week aims to bring graduates, universities, employers and industry bodies together like never before and is a celebration of the amazing graduate talent we have in this country. Today we are joined by Amavir and the team from Network Rail as they'll be sharing some top tips for applying to their graduate schemes. They'll also be talking about some of the projects graduates get involved with and providing insight into what it's really like to work within their business. During the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions using the chat facility and we will do our best to answer as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to the Network Rail team.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everyone. Great to speak to you this morning. My name's Amavir, and I'm an emerging talent acquisition manager working in the graduate recruitment team. Myself, I started 4 years ago at Network Rail as a HR graduate, and now I'm on the other side. The first half of the session, I'll just be talking you through some recruitment tips to ensure that you are able to do the best you can at all the various different assessment centres that I'm sure you're all in the process of at the moment going through, whether that be physical and now virtual. So hopefully we can provide you with a bit of value and help you with the ultimate aim of getting a job. I've also got Joanna and Harry who will be speaking at the second half of the presentation, and they'll be talking to you about their experiences during COVID-19 and some of the great stuff that they've been doing to sort of help the country. So yeah, without further ado, I'll get started. So the first thing that's essential when you're applying for graduate schemes is research. And I think the most important thing to emphasize is that it's a two-way process. Not only are we looking for great graduates to help support our company and grow the business, but even more so, it's about seeing whether the company is right for you, whether your morals are fit in line with what the company does. And essentially, that's what will ensure that not only do you have a long career during the graduate scheme, but you then go on and flourish. Because if your own internal values clash with the employer that you're applying for, we tend to find that's where people don't tend to have the best experience. So an easy way to start with that is researching the values and morals of the company that you're looking to apply for. What's their stance on sustainability and environment? Or, for example, what is your own personal life, and is your employer willing to match that in terms of flexible working? Will you have to travel long distances? Will you have the opportunity to work from home? Obviously that's more probably pertinent, and more employers are doing that now, but it's about seeing whether the employer will able to match your lifestyle, so that way you're able to do the best that you can. And then I think the next point is the scheme itself, because whilst the scheme matters in terms of the quality of the product, in terms of your experiences, the rotations, the qualifications, etc., I think the first thing to say is really, understanding that the employer themselves, just to make sure that you are fit for them and vice versa. It's definitely a two-way street. It's not very much just selfish from us on the employer's side. So yeah, researching the scheme itself, I think that's very important to understand whether you're going to be traveling a lot. Again, sort of touching in with my previous point, what sort of qualifications will you get? I think the other thing to try and find out more is if you can see as much content in terms of where former graduates have gone. Have they gone in a similar sort of route where your aspirations align, whether that's sort of up the ladder in terms of making it to the CEO, or is that in terms of being involved in real important projects that change humanity as a whole? So just sort of leaning into that, I'm making that a bit more relevant to Network Rail. for those of you that are looking to apply. I think the first thing that's worth doing is researching Network Rail's values and morals. So we have our own sort of behaviours and values that we are aligned very heavily to, and there's certain aspects that are really important to us. For example, safety. So we're a really safety critical company, and that's everything. We take safety to sort of the heart of everything that we do. So say, for example, if you were to apply for Network Rail, understanding that we have a really safe approach to what we do and why we do and why we're so safety conscious, will hold you in good stead, not through just the initial application process, but throughout the whole thing. Because then if you're able to bring that sort of later down the line in the interview process, it shows that you've really sort of taken the time to understand the company itself. The next point is preparation. Now, we know a lot of the time when it comes to graduate schemes, and I did this myself, there'll be more than one employer that you'll be applying for graduate schemes. There'll probably be several. And there comes, I think the first thing is about prioritization. Because the market is so competitive, taking the time to possibly do a tier 1 and a tier 2 pool of different employers would stand you in good stead. So your tier 1s will be the companies that you really want to work for. The tier 2s would be the ones that would be great to work for example, or would be okay to work for. And making sure that when you are sort of applying and getting yourself prepared for these different assessment processes, because they can be long-winded, and doing research into companies, you prioritize the tier 1 companies, making sure that you sort of do a little bit extra in terms of the research and the preparation, and then using the tier 2 ones to essentially just get you used to the flow of what the assessment process is, whether that's virtual assessment centres, online assessment centres, interviews, etc. And I think the other thing as well is think about the university course that you're doing at the moment and what you're doing in that course, and not just look at it in terms of I worked on a project and we did this and we achieved this, but more about the personal skills, the interpersonal skills that you're learning, the soft skills, you're working in a team, you're talking to each other, you're collaborating, you're challenging each other, and taking that time to really understand what you've done either at university or in your own personal life will then allow you to come across in interviews as someone who's able to make the link in terms of what you're doing now and how you're able to bring those skills and benefits into the company. Often we find that, especially when we get a bit later into the process, and even just getting through the initial sort of application process, those that can really show and demonstrate that they understand why they've been doing what they've been doing and they can articulate that tend to be the ones that really stand out throughout the assessment process. The next section is about the application. Now, again, sort of touching on my previous point about having a tier 1 and a tier 2 list of of graduate schemes that you're applying for, make sure you give yourself plenty of time to complete the application, and try not to leave it until the last minute, because it's typical. I've done it myself. You're rushing around, you're trying to get in all the right details, and you may not necessarily articulate yourself as well as you can do. And I think also the other thing with that is, obviously, because the market is quite competitive, a lot of employers do close their application windows before the deadline if they receive enough applications. And so that's the last thing you'd want to be doing, is you wouldn't want to be caught out for a graduate scheme that you really want to work for, and really want to go ahead with, only for them to find out that essentially you've missed the boat. And so by having that tier 1 and tier 2 approach, if you're able to understand when the closing dates are for the graduate schemes that you really want to apply for, and then having the second batch, which you wouldn't mind working for, you're then able to prioritize and write, okay, these 5 are the graduate schemes and the employers that I really want to work for, that will really push me, that will really help me strive. These are the ones that I want to apply and get done first, and then focusing on the tier 2 afterwards. The next section is the interview. Now, with COVID-19 and the news this morning about what's going to happen in the future and who knows what, everything is moving more to a virtual sort of world, ourselves included. So I think when it comes to a virtual interview, there's probably a few more additional checks and preps that you want to do prior to going ahead with the interview itself. I think the first thing is prepare your surrounding. Make sure you've got a nice neutral background as much as possible, and that you're away from any distractions, any pets, any young siblings. Just let family know that you're busy, and sort of have a little test run beforehand just to see what it actually looks like on cam, because sometimes you might be catching the angling or something. Now, often this isn't an issue directly with employees and you won't get marked down for it, but in terms of just providing yourself with a clean, crisp space where you're able to do the best you can, will definitely benefit you. The next thing is definitely get your Wi-Fi checked and the mic and the speakers beforehand. Again, whilst we'll try and do everything we can to support where there's any technical issues, a lot of companies such as ourselves will have a telephone number as a backup or anything like that. But as long as your technical elements are working, again, if they're not, you wouldn't get penalized, but it's more a case of your own personal mindset of, yes, everything's working, I'm able to do the best that I can. The last thing you really want to be doing, just from your own perspective, is you've started a virtual interview, it's for a company that you really wanted to work for a while, you've done all the necessary research, you've gone through the application process, and you've gone through that sausage factory of graduate recruitment, only then to finally be able the chance to speak to and engage and come across the Ben your best light when you're speaking to an interviewer, only then for the mic to be a bit iffy or the speakers to be off. More so just in case it throws you out of your pool, your mindset, your sort of your own pace and your rhythm. And we've seen this sort of in some interviews sort of with the previous campaign just gone, where that poor connection and stuff is definitely sort of just put people off a little bit in terms of being able to do their best, and it's provided an unnecessary distraction for when you're sort of in your full swing and sort of full mojo. The next thing is video yourself speaking and answering questions, just so you're able to see how you come across to the person that you're interviewing. Often you might find, and it's a good way to tie this in with just doing some practice interview questions with somebody you know. Often you may be coming across a lot quicker than you thought, or not as articulate as you wish to come across, or perhaps you're just doing something in terms of nudging to the side which you don't like. That by doing that, you then yourself know exactly how to present yourself in front of the camera. And I think the last thing is taking your time. Don't feel like you have to rush the interview. Don't feel like you can't do the typical things in an interview where you're able to just take a second, take a breather, have a glass of water next to you, just so you can sip on that. And if that helps you then to slow your pace down, often when you're doing this in a sort of virtual world, it can be a bit off-putting and you wouldn't do that normal. Take a breather, process the question, and then think of your answer before you then go. A lot of employers such as ourselves, you have ample amount of time for your interviews, because we know that with all this technical world and everything else that's kicking off at the moment, things are get a bit sticky. So please don't worry, there's always additional time allocated. Take your time, keep yourself composed, and just give it the best shot you can. And I think the other thing is, at the beginning, it's the practice and the research and making sure you're as confident as you are in what you want to say, because then not regurgitating that, but then pulling back on those examples which you've practiced several times and you've articulated in a great way, becomes second nature. And especially more so in a digital world where things are a little bit weird, if you've already run through a variety of different interview questions and answers through a webcam where you're speaking and you can sort of see yourself in the corner of the screen, which we all do it, and it can be off-putting when you're staring in and you just focus on just staring straight at the camera, relaying those interview questions, recalling those experiences because you've done this several times already, just allows you to do as best as you can do. And that's all from me in terms of just a quick whistle-stop tour and some of the best bits of tips and advice that we'd like to offer people, so you're really able to shine when it comes to your assessment centres and your interviews and etc. Just while we go through any questions, what I have done, and before we go on to Harry and Joanna's piece on speaking about their experiences, I just thought I'd leave the above on screen, and I'll also pop it into the chat. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about our graduate schemes, we are looking to go live sort of the 6th and 7th of October. But by doing so, our virtual careers advisors will keep you up to date on when we go live. We'll also send you different bits of content so you're able to see what it's like working for Network Rail, what the culture's like, what our values are like, and also some recruitment tips. Please feel free to scan the QR code on the show now, or you can WhatsApp our virtual careers advisors on 077 8933 638. Fab. Right.
Is there a link, Amavir, as well for people to register interest, or is it?
Yes, I will also pop across the link the chat. So if anyone wants to register please feel free to click and register, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, brilliant.
But in that case, I will pass it over to Harry, who will be speaking about his experiences during COVID-19 as a Network Rail graduate.
Hi, yes. So my name is Harry, and I was in the shoes about 2 years ago now, starting the applications for this graduate scheme. So just a bit of background about me. I studied English at Exeter University, which doesn't seem like a very obvious transition from English into a company working on the railway. But actually it's what I think you find when you join the company is all of the grads have had very different experiences and have done very different degrees, and actually that makes it a lot more interesting and makes the group much more interesting, and it means that no matter what you studied and what background you have something valuable to give to the business, because it's very different and it's not what the norm and not what the expected degrees are. So that's something that I found very encouraging and really nice to see. So in terms of the work that I've done over my graduate year, my first team, my first placement that I was put in is something called Franchise and Access, which is basically managing the relationship between Network Rail and the train operators. So those are companies like Avanti, companies like Great Western. And so our role within the company is to sort of manage those relationships between Network Rail, who look after the infrastructure, and those companies that look after the trains that run on those infrastructure. And what was great about that is I managed to sort of see two different sides of the industry. You know, the train operators will have much more interface with passengers than Network Rail does outside of its stations. And and one of the most exciting parts of it was working on a waste trial at London Victoria Station. So starting in the last few months, what has happened is we've changed the way we recycle at one of our managed stations, which is London Victoria. And so it's basically increasing our recycling so that none of it goes to landfill now. And so one of the projects I was involved in was getting the train operators on board, getting them energized by this idea, showing them how it benefited them, as well as just being the right thing to do in the terms of a sustainability perspective. Then I did a placement within stations. So Network Rail operates and manages the largest stations in the country. So those are stations like Waterloo, Leeds, Manchester Piccadilly, all across the country. They manage the largest stations. So I did a station placement at London Bridge Station. And that was a really valuable few weeks. I got to shadow the shift station manager. So that's the person who manages the floor and manages the operation of the station at any given moment. So there will always be a shift station manager on duty. And so shadowing them was really interesting. What was also super interesting was shadowing different managers, because you got to see so many different styles of management, so many different ways of handling similar situations. Some were very, very sort of, right, let's go, we're on our way. Others were very much more relaxed, and neither was a bad thing. It was really interesting just to see how, no matter what attitude you take, there's always the right way to go forward. And so seeing that variety was really, really useful. Then I did a placement within operations. So because the grad scheme, the general management grad scheme, is very focused on operations now, I got really involved with our sort of weather planning. So as you can imagine, over the last few years, we've had many more extreme weather events. So there's a lot more emphasis on working on how we can manage our track, manage our infrastructure to be best placed to look after it and make sure that no incidents happen. Also within that, there were other interesting stuff. So sitting in on meetings with union reps, which I highly recommend if you do join the company. They're very lively, very interesting, very passionate. Everyone gets very passionate about whatever the discussion is. And I also got to spend a day sort of roaming around with a mobile operations manager. And so they're the person, sort of the first responder to any incidents on the track. So spending a day with them was really interesting, just to see what their day job is. After that, the pandemic hit. And so sort of my workload changed very quickly into sort of crisis management and particularly working in the return to work stream. So one of our big goals was to be able to get all our people back into the offices as soon as they were allowed to, and give people that option, that flexibility to work from home, but also be able to come into the office if they want. And so I was managing the reopening of our largest building within the southern region, which is located in London. And so that was presented loads of challenges because we had to reshift our layout of the building, we had to create one-way systems, we had to negotiate with unions about what the safest way to do things were, reading government guidance, which I'm sure you're aware is changing all the time, so making sure that's up to date. As well as that, another part of that work stream was analysing risk assessments for every site within the southern region. So there were over nearly 200 sites to analyse those risk assessments, go through them, work with the people filling them in to make sure that everything is in place. So it could be little things like making sure there's no personal deliveries coming into the workplace. There could also be bigger things about, okay, how can we help you increase your car park capacity so your colleagues can come in nice and easy during the peak of the virus and still have somewhere to park. So loads and loads of different things that you wouldn't even realise were things. But learning about them and trying to manage them was a good challenge. So over the last year, sort of, I would say that my favourite moments and my best bits was actually when you finally get to work with other grads. So you've been working in your placement for a few months and actually being able to contact other grads. So for example, in my work stream, I had to chat to Joanna about installing one bit of kit into the building so we could open it up. And that was really nice to be able to work with someone that I started the grad scheme with, catch up with, especially during a time where we weren't seeing anybody at all in person. So being able to just pick up the phone, have those conversations about work, but then chat about other things as well, about how we were doing, was great. What's also brilliant is that even after a year, every day is still a learning day. I'm learning something new every day, and that's something that I really look for in what I'm doing. I think the moment you stop learning is the moment it gets a bit boring, and so yeah, every day is still learning something new. And then in terms of the structure of the grad scheme, something that I really liked was that the onus was on me to go and find my placements. So there was never really any issue with finding a placement, but the whole point was I got to choose where I wanted to go. So I was the one that had to go to managers and say, hi, I'm Harry, and I'm really interested in spending some time with you. What sort of work do you do? I think when I chat to other friends who are on other grad schemes, their sort of 3 years, for example, has been mapped out for them from day one, and they don't get much chance to chat to their line manager beforehand and say, actually, I'm really interested in going down this route. And having that flexibility within this grad scheme, sort of choose where you want to go into, was really great. So that's why I would recommend this grad scheme to everyone, because it gives you that flexibility, and it gives you a really good, strong group of colleagues to work with. In terms of advice for applying, I would say, as Amavir said, research what's going on in the company at the moment. So safety is always a big topic. Every week we get safety conversations. We have a safety conversation with our teams. And then the other thing that we're sort of really focusing on now is this idea of putting passengers first, and it's trying to shift our focus onto customer service. So when you're doing your applications, when you're doing your CVs, don't underestimate how useful experience working in a bar is, or working in a shop is, where you've had a customer facing role, because especially with Network Rail, we're shifting in our focus onto customer service and making sure that our passengers are at the heart of every decision we make. So that experience will be really, really useful. That is all from me. So I will pass over to Joanna.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harry. That was great.
Thanks, Harry. So hello, everyone. I'm Joanna. I'm 23 and I was on the General Management Graduate Scheme, but I've recently just come off it because I just got a new role as the Executive Assistant for the Chairman of the organisation. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second, but I'm mainly here to talk to you about my experience on the graduate scheme. So my experience is, I guess, kind of different to Harry because he was placed on the route. So like he said, he had a lot more room to see lots of different areas, but something I was kind of put into a function. So originally I was supposed to spend all my time there, but if you're not happy where you are, this is something I really recommend. Do tell someone, tell your line manager, talk to the scheme manager, and that's essentially what I did to start off with. So the scheme is really flexible, and you can really tailor it to what you want to get out of the scheme. So at first I wasn't too sure. I started off in project management in the research and development team, and that was really interesting, but I knew I really wanted to get some experience, more customer focus. So I went in then to do a placement with stations, and that was really good, to spend time actually interacting with passengers and seeing what station staff do, because that's the that's the team within Network Rail that actually had the direct communication with passengers. So it's really, I really recommend that if you're going to go onto the this scheme. And then after that, COVID struck, and I was supposed to go into performance, and I did a little bit of work with that. But same with Harry, I got quite heavily involved with crisis management and COVID response. So the area where Harry and I kind of interacted a lot was with getting our offices back and opening and safe for our critical workers. So many members of staff, they can't work from home, they have to stay in the office because they're moving trains from A to B, they're at the stations. So it's really important to make sure we're keeping our workforce safe during this time. So a key project I was involved with during the scheme was installing thermal cameras which detect people's temperatures. And this is something that was really exciting for me, because whilst I was supporting lots of projects and I was busy, this was the first thing I really owned and had to lead and kind of use my initiative. It was scary at first, but that's something I'll definitely push for you guys to really try and own your own piece of work. It might be scary at first because you're new to the organisation, you might not know what to do, but everyone's really supportive, and that's definitely been the best experience I've had. So within that, I had to essentially communicate with all of the different stakeholders. We installed these thermal cameras in 110 Network sites. So we installed 118 cameras in those sites. So that meant I had to talk to every lead from the site to make sure we were installing the cameras in a safe manner, ensuring they were working correctly, sorting out different sorts of variations with those. So at the office that Harry worked, there was a few problems with temperatures, so I worked with Harry quite closely to try and make sure the thermal cameras would work and would be able to detect people's temperatures, so they were safe in our buildings. And I also did some response work with the NHS. So we were trying to, the NHS Nightingale in Manchester, lots of members of staff in Network Rail assisted that. So I also supported as much as I can with more back office stuff. So many people on site. I was there to deal with emails. I had to contract with a fire service because it was found out that the NHS Nightingale in Manchester needed 24/7 care, and the Greater Manchester Fire Service was unable to provide that 24/7 cover. So I had to look at commercial options. So that's something I got involved with. So you think you might get involved with just the railway, you can get involved with all sorts of things, and the variety, like Harry mentioned earlier, is amazing. I've gone from so many different areas of the business, and in all honesty, I still don't know exactly what path I want to go down, but that's what's good about the scheme. You get to see so many different areas, and once you do roll off the scheme and get a position, that's not necessarily the path you have to go down. So if I went into a project management role, I don't necessarily have to stay in project management. I can go into lots of different areas. You can go into HR, you can go into finance, you can go into operations, you can go into all sorts, and that's what's really great about the scheme. And the scheme really helped me get my new role, and that role's quite high profile in the sense that I'll be working with the chairman, and that's something I definitely I did not think I would do when I started the grad scheme, and again, that's getting involved with such a variety of different roles. So that's going to help me even further in a year's time when I'm going to have to look for a new job, because it's a 12-month secondment. I'm going to have even more variety and experience to kind of pick sort of the path I want to go down. But what's also great about the scheme, you can get different qualifications. So I chose to do an APM, so that's the Association of Project Management qualification. So project management is used in any role you go into, and I wanted to do a fundamentals course to just understand basics of project management, so about a business case, about sponsors, the project life cycle, and just understand that. So anything you're really interested in and want to get a qualification in, mention to your line manager. and they'll be able to help you. So that's what's so great. You can really get involved with anything. But in terms of tips and advice for the recruitment process, if you are interested, again, like Harry said, research. I did a lot of research and it was really helpful. Even if they don't ask you a question but on it, it's really useful to kind of put that into your responses. So if they do ask you something about customer experience, you can highlight the fact of putting passengers first, and that's really useful and will show that you've done your research, and also that you're interested and in doing so. But also, yes, use your own experience, and any experience is good. So I didn't have much paid experience really when I applied. I had a lot of voluntary work, but I think use things that stand out and different. So I did a lot of work with children. So even though it has nothing to do with the railway, you can adapt it to suit any sort of style and relate it to any question. So use things that might stand you out as well, and that is different to everyone else, because yes, lots of people have had experience in work environments like bars, and obviously use that. Don't just feel like you have to use a different example, but just use whatever you think. So even if you've been in a basketball club, anything would help and make you stand out. I definitely found that the case for me. I'm trying to think of anything. I think that's it from me. But any questions, please do ask. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Joanna. Well, yeah, we've got quite a busy room today. Lots of people attending, which is great. And we've had loads of questions coming through. So, yeah, do you want me to just start? Amavir, are you back in the room again? Are you still here? Joanna, Harry, is Amavir still around?
Hello? Yes, sorry,
No.
my signal.
You're still there, mate. That's good. Right. So, yeah, a couple of questions to start with. So, the first one from Shelley says, what entry requirements do you have?
So, depending on the scheme that you're...
Yeah.
Who's answering that?
So
Sorry.
I'll go for this one. So yeah, depending on the some of it, I'll go for this. So depending on the scheme, in general, what we ask for our graduate schemes is a 2-2. Now, certain schemes have specific requirements. So, for example, our engineering scheme, whether that's our mechanical, electrical, or civil, your degree would have to be accredited by one of the IMechE, the IET, or the ICE. For some of our business schemes, it's more general, and we do that more on purpose because, like Harry was saying, having a variety of different people from different backgrounds ultimately brings out the best in us. So I'd check the website if there's any particular schemes that you're specifically interested in, just to double check whether there is a certain requirement. But otherwise, a lot of our business schemes are quite flexible for that reason.
Okay, cool. That probably leads me into my next one. Someone's asked, does it matter what uni you went to? You know, do you prioritize certain universities over others, like Russell Group universities, or is it's the same across the board?
Not at all. Not at all. And I think just to sort of emphasize on that, even throughout the assessment process, it's less about, not necessarily so much about what you studied, but more who you are as a person and your personal qualities that you bring is more what we try and find out.
Okay, cool. What's the biggest no's for applicants, whether it's their CV or when they're applying? What's the biggest thing that stands out where you think, cool, no, you shouldn't have done that, just so we can help these guys with any pitfalls?
I think for me, it's when we're assessing candidates, usually it's pretty obvious on when someone's like taken a bit of time to find out and do a bit of thorough research over the company or about our values, etc. And I think, yeah, taking that additional time out of your day to really do that for any employees you're looking to apply for makes you stand out for sure.
Okay, cool. Someone's asked here, do you have a specific email or person whom we can send our CV to as they would like to do sort of an internship with you guys?
So
Sorry.
we don't accept CVs. It would have to be done through the application form on our website. And yeah, as mentioned before, we'll be going live on the 6th and 7th of October for our graduate placement schemes.
Okay. Jack's asked, what software do you use for your virtual interviews?
Good question. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. We're looking to change at the moment, but anyone that does go through the process, we make sure like you've got you're able to access it, and if there's any like backups or secondary platforms that we make sure we've got a couple of contingencies as well. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. This campaign just gone. We finished off our interviews with our apprentices and grads via Teams, but we're still just finalising who we're using this year.
Okay, cool. Raman's asked, do you accept HND?
No, we don't. It'd have to be a full diploma or degree.
Okay. So Lorraine has asked, want to know what kind of jobs there are. I don't want to be an engineer, but obviously you've touched on the business pathway and stuff like that. So there's a real mix in there.
For sure. And I think it's worth definitely checking out the website because the one thing, and even you don't really grasp it until you're sort of in the company, is we're massive and we do a lot. And there's so much diversity and difference in what we do. For sure, I'd recommend just checking the website out and see what sort of tickles your fancy.
Brilliant. Cameron's asked, where are the jobs based?
Again, it depends on which scheme you apply for. We've got certain schemes which are more nationally focused across the country, like our ops and general management scheme, our engineering scheme, project management, etc. And we do have some that are a little bit more location specific, such as our property, which is more MK in London, Milton Keynes in London.
Milton Keynes in London, okay. Chloe's asked, how many applications do you get for each place?
So we do receive a high volume of applications, but again, what we try and do is we have sort of set requirements. So once we receive enough applications, we do close our accepting any more. But if I was to give it a sort of a ballpark figure, you're looking sort of in the 3,000-4,000.
Wow. Okay, very popular then. Nick said,
but just to sort of emphasize on that, sorry. In terms of the amount of roles that we have, I think in total we're just shy of a good 300 placement schemes and graduate schemes and stuff.
Okay, cool. Nick said, will we get to meet other graduates if there's another lockdown?
Yeah, so the answer I guess would be yes. That might be virtually to begin with. Funnily enough, we're doing our virtual inductions for this year's in cohort today and tomorrow. But yeah, there very much will be the opportunity to meet up and stuff, whether that be socially distanced or what that might be. Essentially, when you start, you have your own scheme manager, and there'll be plenty of time to meet each other for sure. Usually, we do like a whole couple of like a week or so residential stay in our training centre Westwood, but that's not possible at the moment with what's going on.
No, of course, yeah.
Just to follow on from that one, sorry, we've had some of our graduates come into the building I work in last week, so there's 6 of them joining our building, and so we've set them up so they have that sort of chat with each other and they can actually see each other socially distanced in a meeting room for the first time this week, all of them together. So there is definitely that of making sure you guys can all chat to each other and see each other and just exchange phone numbers and create your WhatsApp group chats and all of that. So you definitely have that support once you've started in your role.
Excellent. Okay. So Portia's asked, do you recommend working at Network Rail?
I'll leave that to Joanna and Harry because I'm sure my answer is biased.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are. I've really enjoyed my first 12 months working for the company, and I think when when you chat to other friends in other companies, and you realised what a good deal we get. It's not none of us are working sort of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and doing ridiculous hours. We've all got a healthy work-life balance. Networking, especially during the pandemic, has been super supportive and set us all up to work from home really easily. And that sort of flexible working is something I think that the company as a whole is looking to move towards. And so yeah, you get looked after. And so yeah, I would recommend it. Joanna?
I'm the same. I was going to touch mainly about the support. I think it's great that I've only been working a year before job at Network Rail, and they have so much trust and they really value you and your opinion as well, even though you might not necessarily have worked there for a long time. So I've had a really positive experience, and there's such variety. So even if you do find yourself in somewhere that you don't like, there will be something else for you, I'm sure. And everyone is it's great. I've had a really positive experience.
Fantastic. Sharon's asked, how long does the grad scheme last?
It depends on the scheme. So the general management scheme's been 12 months, but it's not set in stone. So especially with everything going on at the moment, you can extend if you want to, and if you haven't found the job that you're looking for. But I believe other schemes is longer, like project management is 2 years. I believe engineering's longer. So it really does depend on the scheme, but it's not set in stone. I fell over a couple of weeks after 12 months, and others have come off the scheme earlier because they found a job they like. So it really depends.
Okay, cool. Eddie's asked, this one's for us, is the session recorded so you can watch it after? Yeah, Eddie, it'll be fully recorded and it'll be uploaded to the National Graduate Week site, but also careermap.co.uk. It'll be on there for you as well. Probably tomorrow, hopefully, all being well. Let's have a look. Names asked. I'm a graduate, but most of the graduate schemes I try to apply for ask for previous experience. How can I have previous experience if I'm fresh out of university, basically?
I think so with this one, what I would say is we're very well aware that a lot of people coming out of university won't necessarily have years and years and reams of work experience. I think the main thing to do is sort of articulate what Harry and Joanna articulated a bit earlier, was just showing what you do in your outside of your university life, whether that's you might be a carer, you might be working in a society, you might be part of a football team, or whatever that is, and just showing how you can bring those transferable skills into an organisation.
Good advice, thanks, Amavir. Finley said, are we guaranteed a job at the end of the scheme?
So every graduate starts on a permanent contract, but in terms of you are expected. Well, while I say that, it's not a case of you'll then fall into a job at the end of the scheme. You will then have to apply for different roles in the organisation. I guess the first one is because we are massive, there's always a different variety of jobs going on. But secondly, we'll try and support you in that transition as much as possible.
Okay. Anderson said, hi, I'm a mechanical engineering graduate, currently work for a rail maintenance agency and want to join Network Rail. I have experience as a maintenance technician, which I did prior to studying at uni. Anderson, I'd probably say have a look at the telephone number here and join the WhatsApp group. Is that what you'd say, Amavir?
Yes, definitely. And I think the fact that he's got all that experience will only help when he's in an interview process, because he can speak about and articulate what he's been doing.
Brilliant. Kashif, I went to an employer meeting in UEL and I was told that Network Rail only consider master for civil engineering role.
No, I must apologise where you've heard that from. that's not the case. As long as you've got a graduate degree, so to an MBA or MSc off the top of my head, you're fine. No need for a master's. No need for a master's.
Okay. Kanyel said, are vacancies all over the UK? I think you've already touched on that one, haven't you? Sarah said, what is the work-life balance like? I think you've already touched on that as well. Neil said, for office-based roles, can you work from home?
So with what's going on at the moment, essentially, majority of our employees have been encouraged to work from home. With everything that's going on in the world, if we ever return back to any form of old normal as opposed to new normal, and even prior to this pandemic going on, we've always had a pretty flexible work-life balance culture. It'd just be a conversation that you'd have with your line manager to just sort of explain kind of what sort of flexible pattern you need and whether it's passable, again, depending on whether you're working shifts or not. So yeah, whilst we were always pretty open in terms of the whole flexible working home life balance anyway.
Okay, cool. Leah's asked, and this is probably one for each of you if you want to answer, because you'll all have probably different views, but what is the best thing about working for Network Rail?
So if I go first, I think for me, it's the variety of things that we do and how easy it is to sort of experience what that involves. Like, again, a few years ago when I was on the grad scheme, it was more of a HR-based one. But if I wanted to go see track or if I wanted to go new,
You still there, Emma?
go on much that we do, and there's hello, can you guys hear me okay?
You broke up a bit there, mate.
Sorry, my signal is rubbish. So yeah, it was just a case of that we're massive, and even now I probably don't know all the things that we do at NR. It's and the best thing about it is being able to taste it or see it is relatively easy, even more so on our grad schemes. I think if anything, we'll be encouraged you getting out and seeing the network.
Okay, cool.
For me, I agree with the variety of different stuff. It's been great to be able to go out on track and do all sorts, but it's also the importance you have. So you might not necessarily have a direct impact on the passenger, but indirectly you do as well. So for instance, the example of the thermal cameras, I installed those in the sites to protect our workforce in order to transport passengers from A to B. So you always will have an importance and impact to passengers no matter what role you're in, directly or indirectly, and that's been really nice, and actually really making a difference. It's been great, and yeah, that's been my favorite thing.
I think for me, as I said earlier, it's the constantly learning, and that there is, as Joanna and Amavir both said, there is such a variety. So especially during your graduate scheme, you will constantly be learning about new things, and there's so much to learn. There's so much to see, and I think that's just exciting. At the end of the day, I think that is exciting, and there's so much to do that you'll struggle to cram it all into one graduate scheme, which makes the future beyond that exciting too, because it's not as if the moment you stop your graduate scheme, that's it. There's no more learning. There's nothing more to see. There's always more to see. There's always more to learn, and you get that support from your line managers and from your colleagues to do that and say, actually, I do want to get involved in this project that the team is doing, or can I sit in on this meeting that discusses this so I can learn a bit more about it. You still get that support beyond your grad scheme as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. How long is the application process? Someone asks.
So it does depend a little bit in terms of which scheme and when you applied, etc. But if I was to sort of give a rough estimation of if you were to apply in October, it'd be sort of, we'd try and get back to you, and we'd run assessment centres from about January onwards. So if you're in the first batch of sort of people that we're assessing, you'll sort of find out early February up until around April, May time. We'll be sort of sending offers out to people just to let them know as we finish the assessment process. So as soon as sort of you've had your interview, we try and let you know in sort of the next 3-4 weeks or so.
Okay, brilliant. So what is actually an assessment centre? I've got a few questions about it. What is the process? Is it a series of interviews, tests? What exactly would be going on?
So in an assessment centre, essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to put out some mock scenarios of situations in order to find out how people react. So, for example, you have your interview as part of the assessment centre when you have a chance to sort of show who you are, what you're about, etc. But then, for example, we would have like a team working activity where you'd be working as a team. There'll be a scenario placed in front of you with a variety of different conditions, and essentially you need to work together to form some sort of output. And then we're in that situation. The assessors will be looking at how you engage with each other. Are you working well? Are you taking each other's points into consideration? Is somebody over dominating the group? That sort of thing. And so essentially we're just trying to assess a couple of different elements of who you are based on putting you through some mock scenarios and activities.
Okay, brilliant. Anderson's asked, do you have any roles for graduates who have track experience and an apprenticeship in machine shop engineering?
Yeah, as long as provided your degree matches up with, it's an engineering focused one with one of the schemes, so it's accredited by the IMECI, IET or ICE, that shouldn't be an issue. If anything, it should be an advantage for when you can speak at an interview about all the great stuff you've already done.
Yeah, sounds really good. Cleo asks, I graduated 2 years ago. Can I still apply?
No problem at all. We don't have an expiry date, so to speak.
Okay. Chloe's asked, do you look at GCSEs when I apply for a grad scheme?
No. The important thing is your 2-2 in your degree.
Similar for Finley. I did a BTEC, then uni degree. Will you still accept? I'm assuming that's a yes because he's got a degree.
Yeah.
Do you accept candidates who graduated 2-3 years ago? Yeah, we've just done that one. Do you have any locations in the northeast? Mohammed asks.
Yeah, again, just depending on which scheme, but we have plenty of stuff, sort of Newcastle, Leeds, Sheffield, that end of the world. No problem.
Yeah, Louise said, is there one in Glasgow? I'm assuming yes as well for that.
Yeah, we have quite a few positions in Glasgow, to be fair.
Okay. And last one from Mohammed, can you do the scheme while going to uni?
As long as you're going to graduate and you're in your final year and you're applying for the graduate scheme, that's fine. So as long as you've graduated and you've got your piece of paper, etc., so to speak, for the next September, you're fine.
Brilliant. Well, that's the end of the questions, guys. Have you got anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, just a massive thanks for everyone for attending today's session. Again, if they want to find out a bit more, feel free to just register your interest, and just really a genuinely massive good luck with the next chapter of your lives, especially with the world sort of turning on its head. Things must have been a bit stressful, so best of luck.
And the graduate scheme opens on did you say 6th of October? Yes.
So 6th of October on the Tuesday, we'll be going live, and then for the placements on the 7th, so the day afterwards.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so thanks everybody for joining today. It's been really fascinating. We've got lots of more live employer webinars throughout this week for National Graduate Week. So head over to nationalgraduateweek.co.uk, the events tab there, and you can have a look and register for more. But yeah, thanks for joining and stay safe.